taxi industry bafuna ukuyigodloza hayi ngoba inenkabi, hayi ngoba yikho safe, hayi ngoba inobugebengu, bafuna ukuyigodloza ngoba inemali. And if you don't think and observe what's going on, you're going to miss the point. Because there's no corporation that is white-owned that has ever truly cared about black people. If you don't open your eyes, you're going to miss the point. About 10 years ago, they started a plan, if you look carefully, where they started building roads that were going to add extra buses that were going to transform the transport industry. And they tried to involve Osomategisi, and Osomategisi were not interested. And I want you to be very careful, and I want you to observe what is going on with these new buses, Abazakayo, if you go to Kwamashu, if you go to Edendale, which cost them millions of rands. White corporations, white-owned corporations are behind that because the transport industry is one of the richest multi-billion-dollar industries that is operating in our country. And the transport industry, which is the taxi industry, is arguably the last black-owned industry that exists in South Africa, because we don't own the land, we don't own farming, we don't own anything on the JSE, majorly speaking, we don't own anything majorly speaking in corporates and telecoms, in the internet. The last black-owned industry that has a monopoly that is owned by black people that is left is the taxi industry, the transport industry, and they want to take over that. And I want you to take note of the following. One of the things that they will trick you into thinking is that just because the taxi industry is volatile, it's violent, it's got inkabi, it's the transports that they are using, the taxis themselves are not safe. Just because of all of those things, they will market an idea that will make us believe would find like tax. Now I ask this question: if Ukudloza the taxi industry, one of the things they will definitely achieve is they'll be able to gain a monopoly over transport, which the taxi industry has. Remember one thing: the taxi industry is difficult to tax. I want you to think about that. The taxi industry is difficult to tax. So when Umkhize owns 5 different taxis and those taxis are working and they are gaining cash, because it's a cash-heavy industry, it's a cash-heavy business, it's difficult to tax because you can't track the money. Umuntu might keep him out of their pockets and they pay. How do you know how much they make, and how do you track that business? The reason why they want to hold on to that business, the reason why they are trying to take over that industry, is because they want to cash in on that money that is flowing in and out of the pockets of taxi owners. The thing we should be talking about, Tina, which we must be careful not to get sucked into, we must be talking about how can the taxi industry transform itself and how do we support it? Because guys, every single nationality and race group has got the power, and they've done so in transforming and fixing an industry that they own. If you look at the industries that Indians have in their communities, they make sure, whether it's a food industry, whether it's a healing industry, whether it's a temple on the corner, they make sure they fix it and they upscale the quality so that it serves the people. The other thing which you need to be aware of in every industry that has ever been started, if you look at the Western industries, if you look at how diamond was discovered, if you look at how gold was discovered, in every part of the world where white people colonized indigenous people for those minerals, there was always violence involved. There was always killing involved. And I don't advocate killing and I don't advocate violence, but I want you to understand, Uguti, there's no industry today that has a monopoly all over the world that doesn't have a background of violence. They used that violence to get into that industry, but it stabilized because the business itself was now owned and it was controlled. If we don't begin to think like that, every single time someone sees value in our communities, they will come in and they will sell the negative things that we can fix within our communities, and they will take that industry and they'll transform it and they'll own it, and they will then use that to sell it back to us. The one thing that we are failing in South Africa and Africa is turning black people away from being consumers into being producers, and they are doing this to us. If you look at the issue of spaza shops, now that foreign nationals have now come in, those those that are illegal. Those that are illegal who have come in, they are now dominating the spaza shop industry. The big shops like Spar and Pick n Pay are now going into the townships because they've seen we are not monopolizing our own industries. The next one they are targeting, believe it or not, is the taxi industry. Now, some of you might say in the comment section they won't succeed because the taxi industry is highly violent, and they are highly volatile, and they are highly criminally, there's a lot of criminality going in. But I'll tell you one thing that is good about the taxi industry, which we should all know. Bayakwazi ukulwa. Bayakwazi ukulwa, bayakwazi ukuyilwela into yabo, bayakwazi ukuyimela into yabo. And when they want something, they don't just talk about it, they don't just beg from the so-called white industries or the white men from governments. They blockade the streets, and they stop the whole economy from working because they understand their power. And I am saying, how do we get behind the taxi industry? Because you can tell me about how violent it is. You can tell me about Inkabi. You can tell me about all of those issues. But aren't these the same issues that were existent in other underdeveloped industries that belong to other nationalities that they learned how to fix? And another thing you need to be aware of about the taxi industry is ngeke uyibambe inkunzi in a taxi rank, ngeke umshaye umuntu wesifazane in a taxi rank, ngeke untshontshe in a taxi rank. The taxi industry is very controlled. Yes, it's got violence, but it's very controlled. Yes, it's got violence, but ngeke wenze noma yini when you're in a taxi rank. So I want us to stop listening to outsiders or outside corporations that come into our industries, that come into our communities and try to control the narrative so that they can gain the riches that we have, and really begin to see the value within ourselves and begin to understand how we can monopolize it. I will say to anyone who's in the taxi industry, it is time to have a serious conversation with the soilungisa kanjani le industry, because this industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. If you look at it, even if you Google it, anyone who's watching this video, if you Google it, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So my question to you is, how do we fix it? Because if these corporations are coming in trying to steal it, instead of defending it, you need to think, what value have they seen that you have not noticed? And how can you fix and improve that business so that you can take it to the next level? I know there are many people who have had these conversations, but we need to start engaging on how do we protect arguably the last black-owned monopolized business in the whole of Southern Africa. Because if we lose that, then we'll never ever catch up and understand what is being done to us over and over again. It's a very controversial conversation, but I'm telling you, there's something they are trying to do to take away the taxi industry, and I'm saying to you why. And even if they don't succeed, you need to follow up that why with seeing the reason behind and seeing the value that they have seen. Because if they can put so many millions behind that means they are seeing something that we don't see. And remember, this has happened before if you read history. So tell me what you think. Do we keep the taxi industry? Do we support it? And how can we improve it? Igama lami uMenzi M. Follow me for more content. Let's have a conversation.